So the man at the Vatican, the one who calls himself Francis, made some remarks either yesterday or today that I want to discuss a little bit, and I'm going to give you my my opinion about it. So the title, this is on asianews.it. And you can see it here. I think no, I did not. I did not share it yet, so I need to go ahead and share right now. Screen share. All right. So he says this society who claims to be Christian but is pagan will be destroyed. Okay. And I'm going to quote him. I really don't like to use these words like the Lord, because the Lord means Baal. And God comes from Odin or Woden, which is a false god of the north. But for the sake of quoting, I will quote. On the day of judgment, Babylon will be destroyed with a shout of victory. The great whore, well, this is the man at the Vatican talking. The great whore will fall, condemned by the Lord, and Jerusalem will see its downfall of another kind of corruption, the corruption of infidelity to love. She was not able to recognize the love of God in her son. What in the world is he talking about? I'm sure that Christianity today, both Christianity and the Jews, are absolutely mystified. I'm going to try to break it down for you the best I can in just a minute or a few minutes here and tell you what I think is going on inside this man's head. Vatican City, this society which claims to be Christian but pagan and lives like pagans, will be destroyed by God, Pope Francis said in this homily of the Mass celebrated this morning at Casa Santa Marta, inspired by a passage of the book of Apocalypse from St. John. Oh, they don't even have the passage right. Which describes the destruction of Babylon, the beautiful city, symbol of worldliness, of luxury, of self-sufficiency, of the power of this world, and of a passage of the Gospel of Luke 21, verses 20 through 28, which tells of the devastation of Jerusalem. Well, wait a minute. He can't have it both ways here. He can't sit here and say that Jerusalem is going to be destroyed at the same time as Rome. What's going on here? So he says, on the day of judgment, Babylon will be destroyed with mighty cry of victory. The great harlot will fall, he said, condemned by the Lord, and she will show her truth, a haunt for demons, a cage for every unclean spirit. Francis said that the corruption will be revealed under her magnificent beauty and that her feast will be exposed as false happiness. Yeah, her feasts like Easter and Christmas. That's right. The melodies of musicians, harpists, flutists, and trumpeters will never be heard in you again. There will be no more beautiful feasts. Craftsmen of every type will never be found in you again, because you are a city of work, but of corruption. The sound of the millstone will not be heard in you. No lamplight will be seen in you again. The city may be illuminated, but she will be without light, not luminous. Hers is a corrupt society. The voices of brides and grooms will never be heard in you again. There will be many couples, many people, but there will no longer be... What? He's contradicting the scripture. No, the voice of the bridegroom is not going to be heard in her again, period. And then he goes around and says, oh, well, yeah, but there were many couples, many people, but there will no longer be any love. This destruction starts from within and ends when, as he says, the Lord says enough. And it will come a day when the Lord, enough with the appearances of this world. This is a crisis of society that sees itself as proud, self-sufficient, dictatorial, and it ends in this manner. And then he goes and turns to the fate of Jerusalem. She will see her ruin, he said, in another type of corruption. The corruption that will come from unfaithfulness to love she was not able to recognize the love of, as he puts it, God and his son. The holy city will be trampled underfoot by pagans and punished by the Lord, he said, because she opened the doors of her hearts to pagans. All right. Because she opened her heart or to people like you, or was it that people like you forced the door open and shoved the Jews out and put your paganism in Jerusalem? Let me tell you something. This man is demonic. What he is essentially saying here is, folks, is if Rome goes down, Jerusalem is going with it. This is what he's saying. So I am done with this particular article. I have a few things to say to the man who calls himself Pope. Francis, or whatever your name is, who was it that ordered the abomination of desolation, the graven image of himself as Jupiter, aka Zeus, to be placed in every synagogue, including the temple in Jerusalem? It was Gaius Caligula, on whose throne on which you sit, was it not? Who was it that ordered the destruction of Jerusalem, fulfilling the prophecy of Daniel 9, verse 27, which prophecy you deny? It was Vespasian, Caesar Vespasian, on whose throne in which you sit, was it not? Who was it that carried out the great tribulation on Jerusalem from 67 CE to 74 CE, as written in Daniel 9 and verse 27? It was Titus, the prince of the Romans, who, as a result of his murderous and blasphemous actions, became heir to the throne on which you sit, did he not? Who was it that deceived the masses into worshiping the pagan sun god Baal, calling him the Lord? Yes, that's what the Lord and Baal mean. On Sunday, to honor him on the day of the sun. It was the man Constantine, Caesar Constantine, on whose throne you sit, is it not? Who was it that ordered the murder of all who disagreed with the verdict at the Council of Nicaea? It was Constantine the murderer, on whose throne you sit, is it not? Who was it that caused the Christian world to worship the red dragon on his shield? It was Gregory the 13th, whose throne on which you sit, is it not? Who was it that ordered Leonardo da Vinci to paint a picture of his own son and call his name Jesus? It was Rodrigo de Borgia, aka Alexander VI. Was it not? Who was he that negotiated the Reich Concordat with Adolf Hitler? Oh, you didn't want that to be told, did you? It was Pius XII, on whose throne on which you sit, is it not? Well, let's look at this on The Guardian from March of 2000. This titled Pope Says Sorry for Sins of Church, saving one of his most audacious initiatives for the twilight of his papacy, John Paul II, yesterday attempted to purify the soul of the Roman Catholic Church by making a sweeping apology for 2,000 years of violence, persecutions, and blunders. From the altar of St. Peter's Basilica, which is in fact Jupiter's Basilica, folks, you need to find out what's going on. He led Catholicism into uncharted territories by seeking forgiveness for sins committed against Jews, heretics, women, gypsies, and native peoples. Fighting through trembles and slurring caused by Parkinson's disease, the faux Pope electrified ranks of cardinals and bishops by pleading for a future that would not repeat the mistakes. Never again, he said. Centuries of hate, not love, hate and rivalry could not recur in the third millennium. Well, I'll just continue. We forgive and we ask forgiveness. We are asking pardon for the divisions among Christians, for the use of violence that some have committed in the service of truth? Really? Really? And the attitudes of mistrust and hostility assumed towards followers of other religions. Defying warnings from some theologians that the unprecedented apology would undermine the church's authority, the 79-year-old pontiff asked God to forgive the persecution of the Jews. We are deeply saddened by the behavior of those in the course of history have caused these children of yours. He even, listen folks, listen to me carefully, he even acknowledged that the Jews are Jehovah's children. And if they are Jehovah's children, they are the brethren of Yehoshua the Messiah. So even the man who sits on Satan's seat had to acknowledge that the Jews are Jehovah's children. Cause these children of yours to suffer, and asking your forgiveness, we wish to commit ourselves to genuine brotherhood. Wearing the purple vestments of Lenten mourning, the pontiff sought pardon for 7 categories of sin: general sin, sins in the service of truth, sins against Christian unity, against the Jews, against respect for love, peace, and cultures, against the dignity of women and minorities, and against human rights. Well, I don't know if I can continue with this, folks. I've had enough of this one too. If you're acknowledging all these crimes against humanity, asking for forgiveness, maybe you should have a look here in Hebrews 12 and verse 16. Who was it that's speaking here, starting verse 14? It was Paul, the only apostle to the Gentiles. What did he say? Follow peace with all men and holiness, without which no man will see Jehovah. So to John Paul, forgiveness denied. Hey, I'm not the one who denied it. Paul said it. The only apostle to the Gentiles said it. Let me read it again. Follow peace with all men and holiness, because without it, no man shall see Jehovah. Looking diligently lest any man fall or fail of the grace of Jehovah, lest any root of bitterness. What? Well, that describes what the last article was. It describes it perfectly. What was the cause of all the murder and mayhem that were committed by Christians? And at the very top, the man at the Vatican, what was it? It was a root of bitterness that caused the hatred that he described. Springing up, the root of bitterness springing up, troubling you. And thereby many of you will be defiled, lest there be any fornicator or profane person such as Esau, who for one morsel of bread, one morsel of meat, sold his birthright. For you know how that afterward, when he would have inherited the blessing, he was rejected. For he found no place of repentance, though he sought it carefully with tears. Request denied. Forgiveness denied. Why? Murderers! That's why. And if you sit on the throne of a murderer, you yourself have become that murderer. And finally, I'll go to Revelation 18, and we shall see what happens to Rome. The same thing that happened to Constantinople. And after these things, verse 1, and after these things I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was lit with his glory. And he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the Great is fallen, and has become the habitations of devils, and the hole of every foul spirit, and the cage of every unclean and hateful bird. For all the Gentiles have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. Yes, what we just read about Esau, the fornicator. And the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth are waxed rich to the abundance. No wonder the Jews call the Europeans Esau. No wonder. How fitting. It's all true. And I heard another voice, verse 4, out of heaven saying, Come out of her, my people. My people? Didn't we just read that one of these, who was it? John Paul II, wasn't it? John Paul II said he confessed that the Jews are Jehovah's children, did he not? He did. Come out of her, my people. So that's obviously talking about the Jews. That's right, these people, the Jews. That you be not partakers of her sin, nor that you receive her plagues, because her sins have reached unto heaven, and Jehovah has remembered all her iniquities. Yes, 2,000 some years worth. Reward her as she rewarded you. What do you mean, as she rewarded you? As she rewarded who? Could it be the Jews? As she rewarded the Jews? Could it be as she rewarded Jerusalem? And could it be as she rewarded the followers of Yehoshua, who did not go along with the Council of Nicaea and died for it? Double unto her, according to her works, in the cup which she has filled. Give to her double. How much has she glorified herself, living in riches, lavishly at the expense of those she trampled on? So much torment and sorrow give to her. For she said in her heart, I sit as a queen and no more a widow, and I shall not see sorrow. Therefore her plague shall come in one day, death, mourning, and famine, and she will be utterly burned with fire, for strong is Jehovah Elohim who judges. Yes, Rome, just like Constantinople, will be burned with fire. But I will tell you, Rome is going to get it even worse than Constantinople did. Verse 20, rejoice over her, you heaven, and you holy apostles, and you prophets, for Jehovah has avenged you on her. So, when that day comes, I'm going to rejoice. I'm going to sing praises to Jehovah and rejoice, and I might even have a little something to drink. Because that day cannot come fast enough. Thus with violence, because she committed all this violence that John Paul II talked about, because she committed all that violence, violence is going to be done to her. Great city Babylon will be thrown down and shall be found no more at all. And the voice of the harpers and musicians and the pipers and the trumpeters shall no more be heard at all in you, and no craftsman whatsoever craft he be shall be found any more in you. It will be desolate and bare. Why? Why? Because just as John Paul said, verse 24, and in her was found the blood of the prophets, the saints, which are the Jews, the Kodesh. Kodesh are the Jews. Well, wait a minute, the prophets. Which prophets? The apostles, perhaps? Oh, but you accused the Jews of killing the apostles. Well, now it's going to be on you. The blood of the prophets, who also are the prophets, and the last two prophets, which are the two witnesses, by the way, and of the Jews, and of everyone who was slain upon the earth. You see, all those people that John Paul II mentioned, yes, all that blood is going to be required. There is no forgiveness of those crimes. You may ask for forgiveness, you men at the Vatican, but you will not receive any. Rome might ask for forgiveness for all the crimes committed against mankind, but it will not get any. Christians who in the name of Jesus committed all this violence and horrific genocides will not receive pardon for this. No. And to add the final nail in the coffin of Babylonish Rome, your fall will be the rise of Jerusalem, will be the forgiveness of Jerusalem, will be the forgiveness of all of Jerusalem's sins, will be the forgiveness of all of Israel's sins, will be the forgiveness of all of the Jews' sins. but no forgiveness on you. You and your city will burn. It's coming. There is no way you can stop it. There's no way any man can stop it. It's coming. And one more thing. In spite of all of this warning, and you know this is true because even you confess it yourself, you men at the Vatican, you still will not give up your title. In spite of knowing what's going to happen to you, you still cannot give up your title, can you? No. Esau.